Hello, everyone. I see all of the people coming in. I hope you guys are having a great Wednesday so far. We're going to get started here in a minute or so. I'll let people still just trickle in, and then we can just get going with a super great event. Before we get started, though, I do want to say that we received some feedback from a couple of people about from our marketing about not being clear enough about what the event was. So we want to say thank you so much for that feedback. We appreciate it. We're taking it to our marketing team. We also have our survey that goes out at the end of this with a Google form. You guys can fill that in, put any feedback, any potential other questions you'd have for future Connect events, fill that in as well. We'll also be sending out this recording for you guys on YouTube. We'll also have our socials. Make sure to give us a follow. We put up some cool stuff, some helpful tips and some helpful tricks. So thank you guys so much for joining us to today's event. I know I am different than Dr. Dave, who's usually here. This is actually my first time ever moderating, so this is going to be a fun journey for all of us to go through together. And it seems like everyone is in here. I see someone told me happy birthday. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for my birthday this year, the fun year. I won't tell you guys my age because I want you guys to think I'm young, because I am, right? But thank you guys so much for wishing me a happy birthday. It's my favorite day of the year. I got my free Starbucks coffee this morning, free cookies from Crumble, all of those places. So thank you so much. But without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to the actual most important people on this panel today, which is going to be Vanessa and Phillip, our wonderful guides that we have here. So I'm going to go ahead and go with ladies first, and I'm going to introduce you guys to Vanessa. So Vanessa is a truly phenomenal human. She is a retired emergency physician who has been married for 39 years. Congratulations, Vanessa. She's raised 3 biological children. She's had 4 miscarriages, and she's adopted 2 children who are now teenagers. She believes her life experiences have helped her to be able to speak to various situations of interest facing many today. Thank you so much for joining us here, Vanessa. We're happy to have you. If you want to say hi to everyone.
Happy to be here. Hello, everyone.
Thank you, Vanessa. All right. Now we're going to go over to Phillip, who is here. Phillip is a dynamic and compassionate professional with a diverse background spanning from military intelligence, behavioral therapy, and leadership roles in retail management and volunteer initiatives, while currently excelling in a Master of Arts program in clinical psychology, psychology, with a focus on marriage and family therapy. He is a man of faith, the owner and CEO of Articulation of King.com, and a certified life guide. Also, if you've actually called in to LifeGuides ever, it's very, very likely that you talked to Phillip on the phone there. He's one of our main LifeGuides that we have. That's part of our well-being concierge. So thank you so much for being here today with us, Phillip. Feel free to say hi to everyone.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I've been here all month, so
I know we've had you on multiple Connect events, on different client events, and we're just glad we got some of your time today. So thank you so much, Phillip. Now, this is an extremely important conversation, and I'm so glad that we're going to be having it right now. Of course, it's ending the month, and I think what better way to celebrate Black History Month by providing a conversation and an open space that we can continue this conversation past the month of February. So let's get started, everyone. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. They'll get sent over my way. You can ask them anonymously. Keep blowing up that chat, sending those hearts, those clap emojis. We love those. Those keep us going. So keep sending those all the way. So our first question, if we're going to get started, is really just focusing on Black History Month. So Vanessa, I'm going to direct this first question right at you and put you in the hot spot. So how do you feel about, Black history, and why do you think that teaching Black history is important?
Well, I think that, acknowledging Blacks who have made a contribution to our society is important. Seeing where our country has come from, and in our school system, it's not often taught. We hear a little bit about, everybody's heard, like, I think in 11th grade and maybe in the 7th grade, you get to hear about, Harriet Tubman and I don't know, maybe Martin Luther King, or just, a few. And so Black history is a time when you can recognize other Black Americans who contributed to a lot of things in our society and see how far our society has come and reflect on how far we need to still go. You know, a lot of times what happens is our media will portray Blacks as, you know, impoverished, incarcerated, on drugs, and with a negative stereotype. And if this is all you hear about Black people, then your concept the as to African Americans here in America is very skewed. Okay, and I remember hearing a story about two little kids. Hope I tell it right. Okay, so two little kids are on an airplane, and I don't know how many of you guys have traveled and had like babies or kids, and they're just rambunctious, and you just like maybe wanted to read your book and watch a movie or take a nap, and they're really disruptive, right? And so well, these two little kids are horrendous. They are not in their seats. They're running, they're crying, they're whining, they're loud. And by the time they go from the West Coast to the East Coast, pretty much everybody on the plane knows their names and is pretty much annoyed with them. Okay. And so you can imagine people are thinking like about this mom, like, what is wrong with her? Does she not see how awful her kids are behaving? And you know, the red's so inconsiderate not to just bring some toys, bring some snacks, sit them down, have them take a nap, do something rather than disturb all of us all the time. And right before the flight ends, one lady is just so totally fed up, and she goes up and she's talking to the mom as one of the little kids has grabbed some of her belongings and is racing down the aisle. And she's just like, you know, I raised several kids, and, you know, sometimes you want to bring like little snacks and different things because your kids really need some discipline. And the lady said, you know, they're not my children. I'm a social worker. They lost both of their parents in an accident a week ago. And I am taking them to live with their aunt on the East Coast. And they're having a really hard time dealing with it. And so the lady just felt so horribly, as she should, you know, because a lot of times when you don't know the story behind where people come from and the things that they have gone through, you don't have the empathy to understand what they're going through. And I think that's one of the biggest things that acknowledging Black History Month and talking about different situations does for us, is it gives us empathy and compassion that we might not have in just looking at what the media and everything says about, you know, Black African Americans.
Great point. Thank you so much for sharing that story.
Can I just add something to that? Because,
Hop in there.
you know, I have had to follow some amazing people. Thank you, Vanessa, because like, what do I say to that? I'm just going to say this. I think that the one of the biggest things, man, and it made her, Vanessa, talking about the story made me think of this. A lot of people don't realize that Black history is American history. I think that people believe that they are essentially two separate things, and that's kind of the way that Black people have been treated in America. Um, it's not different. American history is a part of, I mean, Black history is a part of American history, and understanding that fact should help to ingratiate Black people into other people's other races, their history, understanding that we have been here since the foundation of the country, just like the Pilgrims have. And you know, Hannah, you being Native American, that too, you know what I mean? Like the history is intertwined, is basically what I'm trying to say. And so like understanding the story is understanding that you don't it doesn't behoove you to learn part of the story. It behooves you to learn the entire story. And that you cannot tell that story without talking about us. You have to talk about us and who we are and the contributions and the atrocities, the horrificness with which Black people were treated during the enslaved times. Understand that all of that is a part of American history. And if we're not talking about that, then you're effectively not talking about history in this country. So
Let me add one more thing. When I was asked to speak on this panel, I was like, well, the person that should speak on Black history as far as teachers or the person who's most read about these people, which isn't me. I'm like, you don't have to be Black to know, the people that inspired Black Americans and helped this country along. It's just a lot of facts. And so I didn't want it to be like a history lesson. But as I was reading and preparing, one thing that I did find interesting in looking at Black history, and I don't know if this will, if you guys didn't know, as I didn't know this, but that Black History Month used to be Black History Week back in 1926. And so there was a guy, I'm sure his name isn't important, but it's Woodson. He was a historian, a Black historian, and he was just, he wanted Black history to be known. And then in 1976 is when Gerald Ford made Black History Week, Black History Month. And so here's what I didn't know as well. Do you know why it's in February? Okay, put it in the chat, yes or no. Do you know? So I didn't know. I was like, I never knew this thing. So anyway, so they wanted, Woodson wanted Black History Month to be in a month where Abraham Lincoln's birthday was. So just a little historical fact, he signed the Emancipation Proclamation that freed the slaves in 1863, right? And when Frederick Douglass's birthday was. And if you don't know who Frederick Douglass was, he was a abolitionist. And I found it so interesting in rereading a couple of facts about him, because a lot of times we don't think about this, but so he was an abolitionist that escaped slavery, right? And he was married to the lady that helped him to go up north, and she died. And his second wife was a white woman. And to me, this just shows that you can hate slavery itself and see the injustice in it, and without hating the people, okay, that were involved in it. So he was enslaved by white people, but that didn't translate to disliking all white people. It was a certain mindset, certain people. He fell in love with his white wife. And so that's how Black History Month came to be. So I'll just add that little thing from my reading.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Vanessa. I don't know about you guys, but I definitely learned some new facts as well. So I did not know that it was actually a week and then went into a month. So thank you for sharing that. And the chat is absolutely blowing up with your information. So thank you for sharing that from your reading. Highlight as well something that Phillip said is that, Black history is American history. The shared contributions, the shared history is what we have to talk about, because we can't talk about one or the other. They're intertwined. They are together. And we often try to say, oh, there's this and there's that, but that's not true. What we need to do is put them together and teach them, as the whole of what is American history. Same thing with Indigenous history, as Phillip highlighted, Black history, all of those things, and make sure that we teach the whole truth of what America is. And with that, I think that's a really great transition into our next question, which I'll pass over first to you, Phillip. So that question is going to be, our country has come a long way as far as, racial viewpoints. And I know that Vanessa highlighted this as, in the media, how they portray Black individuals. So I wanted to go ahead and ask you, have you experienced any racial injustice recently? And how have you handled that?
Hmm. I would say no. I wouldn't say that I experienced any racial injustice, but that doesn't mean that I don't see it on the daily. You know, um it might not happen directly to me, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. And when I see it happen to one of us, it feels like it happened to a family member. And so essentially it does feel like it happened to me. You know what I mean? And I think that that's how it should feel. If we are all in this journey towards equality together, it should feel like whenever you see injustice happening, you should be so frustrated that about seeing injustice happen, even if it's not you, even if it's somebody you don't know, you've never heard of before, you've never seen, they live in a different state, and their lifestyle is even different. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't hit so close to home that it makes you feel like it happened to somebody who you were just at dinner with or you sat next to or something like that. So no, it hasn't happened to me. But I think about all of the times that it has happened and then justice has gone unserved. Um, and it feels like I relive it almost every day, which is why conversations like this and uh talks about what the Black experience is and what we do experience on the daily. That's why they're so important. Because uh, when we become desensitized to the injustice, then we are essentially allowing it to happen. And I don't ever want to desensitize myself enough to the injustices that happen that I feel like I don't care about uh not just my people but any people. It could be anybody. If it injustice is injustice. And if I'm going to stand up for one, I do have to stand up for all, but especially as it pertains to Black people and the all of the atrocities that we see happen throughout um different media outlets and things like that. I'm not on social media, so I kind of miss that. But I do see news and things like that, and uh every time I see it definitely hits close to home, and it's bothersome. It's definitely bothersome. So
Thank you for sharing, Philip. I didn't mean to cut you off, Vanessa, but I also wanted to pass that question to you and have you answered as well.
Yes, well, I have, unfortunately, multiple episodes. The one that I wanted to highlight is probably, well, let me see which one is best. Um, okay, so I'm a medical doctor. And things that happen, the thing that I want to bring to light is that racism still exists, and it may not be as blatant as it was, but it still exists, okay? And some of the atrocities that happened during slavery times and some of the unjust laws still affect us today. So for instance, back in the 1900s, early 1900s, they were not giving loans they would deem certain neighborhoods, primarily those that had Black people in them, they would not give them loans to get housing, okay? And it was part of the Jim Crow laws and segregation. And so there were certain areas where the banks would say it was a poor risk to give these people loans, okay? And because of that, as I grew up, we lived more in a minority community where it was more affordable. And so, although I was an A student in high school, I wasn't my school because the law is that your property tax pays for your school district, right? Which is why a lot of people were like using different people's phone bills or utility bills to go to another school where their school had rundown books, poor teachers, my school didn't offer AP and honors courses. And so although I had A's in my classes, I wasn't exposed to higher education in that sense. And so when I applied to school as an A student, it was during the time of affirmative action. And I got into Stanford University. Okay. So I go to Stanford University, and as I'm taking, for instance, like chemistry, the students around me are pulling out their AP and honors chemistry that they had in the 10th grade, of which I'd never seen before, and we're expected to go higher. And so I was always at a disadvantage because I hadn't had probably 2 or 3 years worth of schooling that they had had in high school. I had never been exposed to. Okay. And then I make it through Stanford and I get into medical school. I went to Tufts Medical School. And my first call when I talked to the financial advisor at Tufts, he's like, yeah, congratulations on getting in. However, sweetie, you're not going to be able to come here. What does it say here? Your mom is a secretary. Yeah, you're not gonna, you need to do something that closer to your neighborhood and closer to the things that you do best. And it wouldn't be medical school because it's just going to be too expensive for you. And I remember thinking like, well, that's not, I went through Stanford, I did my work, I passed the SATs and the MCATs and all these things. And so I wrote a letter, you guys can look it up, and I was just thinking and my last ditch effort before I went to a tech school or something. I wrote a letter to the Los Angeles Times and the San Francisco Chronicle and all these newspapers. And I was just saying how unfair it was. And by the end of, probably before it even came out, I had gotten so many letters of people saying how unjust it was and sending me money. And the school itself called and said they would give me financial aid. But I was exposed to Mr. Hicks first, who said, your mom's a secretary, you're never going to be able to, go here, and then I go and I'm training, the first 2 years of your training is in the classroom and the last 2 years are with patients. And so I trained at New England Medical Center, and your biggest part of your grade is interviewing patients. And so you work all year learning how to talk to patients, how to speak to patients, how to make them feel comfortable. And your final grade is dependent on your last interview. And they have had patients that have signed up to be interviewed by these medical students. And you have 6 colleagues in your group, and you have your mentor doctor. And you go and you're scared, you dress up, you've prepared, you've gone over it in a mirror a million times. And we go in there and the lady is like, I said, good morning, I'm student doctor, whatever. And she's not speaking. And so I'm looking at my mentor and my friends like, okay. And I said, is this a bad day? Are you not feeling well? And she's not speaking. And then finally my doctor friend goes over and she's just like, what is the problem? And she was like, you didn't tell me you were going to bring, and she said the N-word, any of those in here, right? And she goes, I'm not talking with her in the room. So this is my whole grade. And so we go, it was a 2-hour thing of which we left. And so we had to go to the cafeteria. And for 2 hours, we had to talk about this incident, which was like the most humiliating, embarrassing, horrible thing I've ever had to go through in my life, and these things happen, and a lot of times you're like, people don't realize that they still happen. And I'm kind of old now, I guess, but they just, like last summer, we always rent a beach house, me and my family. And we were eating in Coronado at this beautiful hotel, if you've ever been there. And we were like, oh, maybe next year we should stay here. So I go to the front desk and I'm like, do you have a reservation? We would need 10 rooms in July of next year. And the lady is like, well, sweetie, you don't know how expensive this place is. You wouldn't be able to afford it. And I was like, how would you know? Did I ask you the cost? I asked you the room. And so these little slights, that's how racism still exists today.
Wow, I just want to say that was powerful. Because I mean that is truly an atrocity that you experience. And Philip's face, you know, because he's so expressive. That's how we all feel right now. Because that is such a hard thing that you experience. And I'm sorry that you experienced that as well, because you definitely did not deserve it. I want to, you know, point out too that, you know, when we look at history, when we look at where we're at, you know, just because, you know, we're all running the same race, that doesn't mean that certain people aren't starting, you know, 10, 20 yards behind other people, or that there aren't certain hurdles in their race that other people aren't necessarily running into. And that's the truth when we look at privilege, when we look at the path of life, right? So thank you so much for sharing that and sharing some of the hurdles and the experiences that you've had. I
And I
just
share that not to make anyone feel bad or guilty, just to make you aware,
Right.
and, my life has been beautiful and I've had a lot of things, but that did happen. It's a reality. It's a fact. It's not pretty for anyone, but it still happens to some people. And just like the story with the airplane, you have to be aware.
Right. And that's a really great point. It's just being empathetic towards others
Yes.
and acknowledging that just because your experience isn't like that doesn't mean that someone else it doesn't experience those things. If you're not directly seeing it, doesn't mean that it still isn't there. So thank you so much.
Definitely, definitely. And also, it doesn't, we're highlighting instances that happen to Blacks in Black History Month and the injustice. And it in no way takes away from other injustices of other people that are underrepresented in our country. But this is Black History Month, and that's why we're concentrating on that.
Absolutely. Great point. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Philip, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything onto that conversation as well, too, or if
Uh,
we want.
no, it's not shocking. It's shocking to hear, but it's not shocking to know that Vanessa experienced that. As a Black person, like you come to kind of come in contact with all of these stories, and they really resonate with you when you hear them. But it's actually not shocking to hear, because as Black people we know that stuff like that could happen. It just seems like the rest of the world or the rest of the country, or certain people within the country, let me not generalize, certain people within the country seem to think that those kind of instances are behind us because we're not in shackles and we're not out in fields, and we own houses and we operate businesses, and we're CEOs. None of that has anything to do with how Black people still continue to get treated. LeBron James is one of the most famous athletes in the world. A couple years ago, somebody spray painted the N-word on it on the side of his house. You would think that he would be beloved. And certain people would be like, oh, well, he's rich, he's famous, he's successful, he's made it to the proverbial mountaintop. So so he would be immune from those things. No, 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 no. He's still Black. He's still Black. So let's not get ahead of ourselves and assume that just because uh we're not enslaved anymore, that the injustices, the prejudices have all left uh societal norms, because we know that those things are not true.
Great point, Philip. Just diving into those microaggressions and very real aggressions are still apparent today, even in 2024. And that really does lead me into my next question, which is going to be oftentimes that Black people are often perceived as, in comparison to other races, aggressive and angry. So how do we combat these stereotypes while still allowing Black individuals to be their most authentic selves. And I'll pass that over to Phillip first.
Okay. By listening to our stories, I think one of the main stereotypes that you hear is regarding Black women. They'll say angry Black women, or they say that Black women all have attitudes. Without actually knowing. And so you're labeling a Black woman based off of a small instance or a small encounter, without actually knowing who she is, where she comes from, what she does, and even smaller things. You don't have to know all of the macro information, but just understanding like what she went through that day. You don't even know what she went through before she encountered you. And so to assume that she's just angry, or golly, there's so many, but if a Black woman is in a position of power, they'll they will disparage her as well, without even understanding the road that she had to take to get to the position that she was at, to be in a position of power, and then how people treat her even when she is in that position of power. Black women are misunderstood, they are mislabeled, and they are disrespected at every turn, from uh school all the way up. And obviously I'm a Black man, so I can't speak to it like Vanessa would be able to, but I'm married to a Black woman, and I have uh experienced secondhand uh the the treatment of her, just based off the fact that she is a Black woman. And so to combat those stereotypes, um and those kind of things, understand that Black people have a story too, and we have a right to exist in the spaces that we exist, and we have a right to feel just like everybody else. And so don't minimize us to a stereotype that has been societally placed on us without any factual basis behind it, because we are not all what you guys believe that we are, and then speaking about Black men, we are considered aggressive, or dangerous. And in my case, that couldn't be further from the truth. You know what I mean? But you wouldn't know, because if I walk into a room, I walk with my head held high. I may not walk with a smile on my face, and that may make me seem threatening. Um, Power is threatening, and confidence is threatening to people. And I think that when Black people have it, uh, it can be misinterpreted. And so I don't want us to continue to mislabel and misinterpret what Black people are trying to walk in with, just to get ourselves into these different spaces, into these different rooms. And so um just understanding that, hey, like, we are who we are, and without understanding the stories and without understanding the background of people, it's probably not a good idea to pass judgment on any of us without actually knowing who we are and what we go through. We have a right to a voice just like everybody else. And I talked about the table yesterday, but we need seats at the tables, the proverbial tables, the tables of influence, the tables of decision making, and even the tables of action. What are we going to do to actually implement these things? We as Black people need seats at all of those tables, because the decisions that are being made at a macro governmental level, even down to uh school district level, Black people are there, and we deserve to have our say as well. And so, just understanding that we exist, we have a right to exist, and we have a right to not be judged, to show up however we decide to show up, without automatically assuming the worst about us and giving us a chance to show you who we actually are.
I agree. And I can speak to that. It's really hard to be labeled and misjudged as being bitter and ill-tempered and unfriendly because people are intimidated. You know, I'm by nature, even though I'm a speaker and an author, I'm an introvert. And so unless I put on a a smile on my face and you know, you have to I probably should bring this up, but do you guys know what code switching is? Um, well, most people have to know how to code switch. I had to learn early on how to code switch. And I would just say an example, the best example I can give of code switching is like you're home and the phone rings and it's your boss, you have a different tone. You know, you could be screaming at your kids, pick up the toys, da da da, and you're like, hello, hi, yes, this is, you know. And so code switching is using language and body language and different things that you probably wouldn't use within your minority group, but you would use in the majority group. Okay. And the reason you code switch is to be accepted, be promoted, get the job. You have to fit in. I mean, it may mean that you have to change your hairstyle. You know, it may mean you have to, uh, basically you have to not be your real self because it may be intimidating to some of the majority groups, okay? All because of this stereotype. And that stereotype, it started, you know, it's been in lots of sitcoms and stuff as the Black woman has attitude, okay? And it's a negative thing that she's going to be attitudey, she's not going to be friendly. They actually did a study and they had kids with their parents sit there and the parents just sat there. These kids were all under 5 and they showed different colored people, um, light skin, white, Asian, Iranian, just all different people, children. And they said, who would you like to play with? Who looks like they'd be the most fun? Okay. And what they found is that the kids tended to pick that the white child would be the most friendly and the easiest to play with, right? Because what happens is they also did a study, and whatever your exposure is as a child, that is pretty much how you interpret things as an adult, okay? And so one thing that we can do in 2024 is to make sure our kids are exposed to other ethnic groups, you know, that they're just not this foreign alien beings to them, you know, and to watch what we say around children. It makes a bigger impact than you could imagine. And another thing is to just acknowledge that this stereotype exists. A lot of people don't want to admit that they're a little intimidated by, you know, a Black woman, or they're like, oh, well, I never do that, you know. And yet you know, I've read all these, I love reading studies about different things, and people tend to do it. They don't do it purposely, but they do it. And what this does to the Black woman is it prevents us from standing up for injustice so that we don't conform to that stereotype. A lot of times it prevents us from speaking our mind, or complaining about anything, the circumstances or unfair practices, because we don't want to be labeled as that aggressive, overbearing, hostile Black woman, you know. Now I'm old enough that I can do panels like this and not be intimidated, because I'm just like, the truth is the truth. But when I was younger, you know, I wouldn't want to be perceived as being the one that speaks out, and I think I would have been labeled as being hostile aggressive and unfriendly and not make friends. You know, if there's a business meeting, you know, or there's a job or whatever, you have to code switch. You have to be pleasant. And you have, I mean, not that everybody doesn't have to be pleasant. That's not what I mean. I mean, you have to, you can't use, you can't talk ghetto. Okay. You can't come in there looking ghetto because it would affirm that stereotype that you are just this ghetto person that might harm or something like that. So unfortunately, it's real. And I think the way to combat it is to start in early childhood in teaching our kids about all ethnic groups to acknowledge yourself that you could be doing it and recognize it, to be empathetic to that situation and to be intentional in trying to make a change about it, you know. And that would mean if there's a social group going over to somebody Black, not being intimidated, you know. We all tend to gravitate to our people who look like us, right? And basically we're all members of the human race, and we have to, although we will always see color, you know, and we will always be different, we are also very much the same. And so we have to treat people as well.
Let, let me just say something real quick. Let's and I said this yesterday, but I feel strongly about this. Like, even so there's so much that you said, like code switching is a thing. And if you don't know, then you don't know. But we as Black people always know. Like, even on panels like this, you know, there are certain colloquialisms or you know, specifically AAVE, African American vernacular English, that I have to be aware of to not say, because then I might come off a certain way. And so instead of me talking like I might talk around the house, you know, with my wife or like my friends or somebody like that, I do have to turn on this switch. And as a man, I don't experience the kind of marginalization that Vanessa does, and the added uh marginalization of her just being a woman, one, being Black, two, and then also being a Black woman. So there's three different things there. And it sounds like I said the same thing, but I didn't. One, she's Black. Two, she is a woman. But then three, she is a Black woman. And they are effectively trying to uh, 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 legitimize the erasure of Black women through the marginalization and practices and things like that. Even like um it makes me think of like the father of the hysterectomy, and the idea that he performed his experiments and his tests on Black women because he believed that they did not feel the same amount of pain that white women felt. And even now, there was a study in 2019, and it was 73% of medical students still believe that Black people feel less pain than white people. Those kind of things, those are harmful to us, because if you feel like we don't experience that kind of pain, then what'll happen is society will try and justify the increased use of force against us. That's why you see certain things happen to us, and uh eyes aren't batted. And that goes back to the second question that I answered. Like, it doesn't have to be me. I still feel it. I still see it, and it still bothers me because I understand that what that person went through, I can't empathize because I haven't experienced it myself. But I see it and I understand that. And it is, you know, it's really crazy that we have to deal with this. And erasure is a huge topic. And um by saying things like all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter is effective erasure. Let's stop trying to erase the differences that we can clearly see between each other. I am not the same as Hannah. That does not mean that I don't get to exist, or Miss Vanessa doesn't get to exist, or uh her saying that her life matters doesn't mean that mine doesn't matter. But us putting these kind of things at the forefront is letting you guys know that we as a people feel like whatever we are saying, or however we are protesting, shows that we don't feel like we're getting the same, we're drawing the same straws. Our straw is shorter, and it effectively erases us whenever you say that these things don't exist. Our color does matter, but our color does not have to be an impediment to uh understanding and empathic relationships. So let's not say that we don't see color or all lives matter. Let's say that we do see color and we understand that we're different. And by understanding that we are different, we can celebrate those differences together. So
I agree with, one thing about that stereotype or that idea in the eugenics that you're talking about that happened. I mean, it happened. It's barbaric. It happened. But in healthcare, as a physician, that's always been first and foremost on my mind, that Black women die from pregnancy complications almost 3 times more than white women. And part of it is some of the things, I mean, they die of, the mortality is higher. You can look at any study, but the preeclampsia, the postpartum hemorrhage, the blood clots, and the low birth weight babies, and the increased amount of C-sections is because we aren't taken seriously. And because of that myth that, we're crying wolf, that is really not that much pain. And so there's a delay in instituting preventable problems. And this is known. They're trying to change it. Um, but it's a slow process, but it still exists. My daughter just had a baby, and as a physician in there with her, I cannot tell you how scary it was, knowing the statistics and hearing her, complain about different things, and seeing that she wasn't being taken seriously. And I'm like, if I didn't have the medical knowledge that I had, like, the doctors would change every shift. One doctor, they weren't even saying the same things as far as the treatment. One is like, oh, we'll use this to help her with the labor. The next one's like, oh, you've been on this? I would never use that. That's not even FDA approved. The next one would come in and be like, oh yeah, we're going to start back this. And, it's just, that's part of just the medical field. But in all her complaints, she wasn't taken seriously. I mean, she bled out to her hemoglobin was down to 7. A normal one is, 12 to 15 or something. Um, and that was only because I was probably labeled as being an angry, bitter Black woman as I tried to get her taken care of and not let my baby girl die, and it's sad, but it's a fact, it's a deep rooted false belief that we have less sensitive nerve endings and thicker skin and a lower pain rate. And that's at every income level. The test that they did, a Black woman who is wealthy and educated beyond college, same high risk of death as one who is low income. It's just related to the color of the skin, not their economic level.
Wow, powerful, powerful conversation. I think this is important why we look at harmful stereotypes and what they can do, because honestly, in these situations, it's between life and death. And so I think that's why it's important that we're having this conversation. And I could talk about this, listen to you both talk about this all day. But I do want to start wrapping up with my final question that I have for you guys. We know how important Black history is. We know we should continue to celebrate it. But as we also know, February is the shortest month of the year. And I know Philip and I talked about this prior in a different meeting. And I also have seen shirts that have said, not just a month. And that really got me thinking about how can we continue to celebrate and expand our knowledge on Black history beyond this month. So it's, Philip also shared this with me before, it's not just a month that he is Black, he's Black every day, right? Surprise, I didn't know if you guys knew that, but it's there. So how do we continue to celebrate and honor Black history throughout past this month?
Ms. Vanessa?
Okay, I would say that, we all can educate ourselves now that our fingertips are right next to the internet. Any of the things that we've talked about today, you can research yourself, you can read yourself, and the things that we've pointed out, I hope that you would, so that you could speak to them, so that you can change your children, so that you can help in causes and you can vote correctly when you go to the polls. And then to watch the little microaggressions, that you're not aware of, to be just cognizant of the fact that when you talk to a Black person, some things, are offensive and you don't even know it. A lot of times people, they'll say to me something like, you are just such an asset to your race. You're just a credit to your race, and you're so intelligent to your race. Okay. And that implies that my race is not intelligent, and that most of the Black Americans are either lazy or dumb, okay? Which is not true. You know, I'm not, I may have, my achievements are based on me, not based on the race that I belong to. And so things that you don't even, that you may have been intending as a compliment, if you say it like that, that's actually a microaggression. That's like an insult, right? In the hospital, when you go and, I don't wear a tag on my forehead saying I'm a doctor, or whatever, but they'll say things like, um, I don't know, do you know with the Black statistics for pregnancy, for instance, if you miss, if a white woman misses 2 appointments for her prenatal care, she is they're told you should do your prenatal care. If a Black woman misses 2, they'll do a drug screen, assuming you must have a reason, you must be on drugs or something like that, and there's been assumptions, like you have a baby and they'll say, instead of asking, where's your husband, they'll say, is your baby daddy around? As if Black women are not usually married. And so just the terminology, the acknowledgement that it exists, and then watching ourselves. No one wants to admit that, some of these practices might have affected us. And I think if you take a internal poll on yourself when some situations come up, and then you recognize it and you deal with it and you change, change starts with us.
Maybe I should have went first. Golly, that was so rich. Let me first piggyback on something that you said. Whenever something happens to the Black community, it is kind of it is considered representative of the entire community, right? The Black community. Whereas when something happens in the dominant culture, it is often only attributed to them. So when you see Black people get into fisticuffs, which happens from time to time, and it makes national news. It is considered, we as Black people are all considered to be that, right? We are all kind of grouped into that. But when you see white people get into fisticuffs, it is only considered them. Our protests uh might have uh some destruction and some violence, and I don't advocate for that at all. But those kind of things may happen. But at the same time, a college will win the national championship and they'll destroy the college town, and we are considered, thugs or degenerates, or and we need to be dealt with, or this needs to stop, which preceded the laws in Florida that if there is a protest that is blocking uh any kind of road, if somebody is in a car and they run over the protesters, they will not be found, they won't be prosecuted. um there's those kind of things, but they don't make those kind of rules when it happens outside of our culture. So just understanding that, like, these kind of things, and maybe y'all know, maybe y'all don't know, um we we have to be aware of these things, and the only time we talk about these things cannot be during Black History Month. It has to be a year-round conversation, much the same way as next month is Women's History Month. We should not just be talking about women during the month of March. We should be talking about women and their contributions to society year round. When Indigenous Peoples Month comes up, same thing. When Hispanic Peoples Month come up, same thing. When LGBTQIA plus month comes up, same thing. Basically, what I'm saying is, we don't stop being those things when the month ends, and so we shouldn't stop talking about the things that affect us when those months end. What we need to do real quick is understand that we have power, and we do have a voice, and that voice is called voting. Get people into these positions. Remember, I talked about the table and having a seat at it. Get people into these positions that will facilitate the hopes, dreams, wants, and needs of us as a people who are representative of us, and help them push the agendas that will facilitate equality for everybody. If we don't do that, then you are effectively silencing yourself. And then whatever happens, you can't be mad because you didn't use your voice to say what you actually wanted. So that's what I'll say.
Thank you so much, Phillip and Vanessa, one, for educating all of us here today with your experiences and the different knowledge that you have. So I want to say thank you guys for being with us. The chat absolutely loved both of you guys. So I appreciate all of your time here today. And I hope that you guys take with you some of these tidbits of information. I know I will be taking them with me as well. So I just want to say thank you both for all of your time. Thank all of you guys for being here for our special event that we're having, and we hope to see you guys on our next month Connect event. So thank you guys so much for being here. Phillip, Vanessa, absolutely great panel, great presentation. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you guys in a couple of weeks at our next event. So thank you guys so much, and have a great rest of your day.
All right.
Bye-bye. You're
Bye.
welcome. Mhm.